Hi, Roger McFarlane here. Let's take a few minutes and talk about Clytemnestra as portrayed by Aeschylus and Collier. Aeschylus primarily, of course. Um, Aeschylus's Clytemnestra has a character that could be traced back to Homer. Um, Certainly, she is a dastardly figure in the Odyssey, but she's a much more complex and rich figure as Aeschylus presents her. And this painting should be on the right side of your slide. The mastery image selected for this course by John Mahler Collier called Clytemnestra is really a fascinating depiction that lines up very closely, I think, with Aeschylus's portrayal of the wife of Agamemnon. Now, Collier was a Victorian painter, painting towards across the middle and towards the end of the 19th century in England, and he would certainly have been familiar with details and drawn to details of Clytemnestra's personality as she's drawn up by Aeschylus in the Oresteia. I think it's interesting that Collier's primary um, occupation is painting portraits of living people, but he did engage in some mythological figures, um, and digging into Collier's works is fairly interesting. This painting is the second undertaking by Collier entitled Clytemnestra. And if you look at the mastery image slide, you'll see a small reproduction there on the slide of Clytemnestra. Essentially the same figure as shown in this mastery image, which I call Clytemnestra number 2 by Collier. But there are significant differences between them. This Clytemnestra and Clytemnestra number 2 has this eerie look on her face, the wide eyes, but she's proudly standing forth, coming out from the bedchamber with this battle axe, really quite an amazing piece of machinery in itself, if you will. Blood dripping off of the axe head, you can see down at the bottom. And then those drips of blood are so abundant that they're running off the front of that step and down into the viewer's view. She's intriguingly holding back that curtain so that your eye will be drawn in past her, so that maybe you can see some detail in there. And I've looked at this painting in real life, and Collier has made that background so very, very dark that you really cannot see anything back there. But she's inviting your eye in to see the work that has gone on inside here, the murder of Agamemnon. Now she's stepping forth boldly into the light of day to proclaim the work that she's done, the execution of the deed, if you will. Now, within Clytemnestra's portrayal in Aeschylus's Agamemnon, we get a really fascinating character, I think. And let me just take these 5 passages that are listed there on the left side of the slide. Just have a quick look at those. The very first image we get of Clytemnestra within the Oresteia, within the play Agamemnon, of course, is the watchman standing or lying down on top of the house of Atreus. And he says he's here watching for a beacon sign, a gleam of fire, bringing word from Troy and report of its capture. Such is the power here of a woman whose heart in its hope plans like a man. It's very important detail to get first off of Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra, when she comes onto the stage, has this really remarkable, there's no way to understate it, very remarkable scene where she talks in big terms about the the contrivance of the beacon signal getting instantaneous information from Troy to Argos. Don't overlook the importance of that scene. It's characterizing Clytemnestra as a perhaps a frightening, well, certainly frightening, awesome woman. The chorus deals with Clytemnestra in an interesting way. They say directly to her at line 605 in a sort of commentary response to the information about her knowing about the sack of Troy and so forth. They say to her, well, I'm sorry. She says to them in a posturing way, I'm looking now at line 605, take this message away to my husband to come as soon as possible. He is the city's beloved darling. As to his wife, I wish he may find her when he comes just as faithful in his home as the one he left behind, the house's watchdog, true to him while hostile to ill-wishers, and similar in everything else, with no seal broken in the length of time. I know no more of pleasure from another man, nor talk of blame, than I do of dipping bronze. Dipping bronze is some sort of allusion to dyeing bronze, D-Y-I-N-G, bronze in blood to make it a rich golden color. I think here Clytemnestra is protesting too much, telling the chorus, go tell my husband that I have been entirely faithful to him. And we know the backstory, and it's going to be revealed before the end of the play, but not till the very end of the play, that she's having this illicit affair with Aeschylus. But back to Aeschylus's characterization of Clytemnestra, the affair itself doesn't come into play in the characterization of Clytemnestra until the very, very end of the playwright's presentation of her. She is very much motivated by the death of Iphigenia and her desire for revenge, and not so much in this in this portrayal of her within the Agamemnon, motivated by the impulses of adultery and so forth. She has a critical scene together with Agamemnon right in the heart of the play, the very famous carpet scene. And without elaborating on that in this lecturette, let me say that it's ironic, intriguing, compelling even to note that Clytemnestra has not been weaving this tapestry. Rather, the tapestry that's presented in the carpet scene, the tapestry that's presented has been acquired. So, at line 947, Agamemnon comments upon it, and he says, I have great qualms about destroying a house's property underfoot, spoiling rich textiles bought with silver. Now, a virtuous woman such as Penelope, or a woman who's posturing as virtuous, such as Helen when she's at Troy, is going to be involved in weaving all the time. And Clytemnestra has not had time to be weaving, and Agamemnon hits the nail right on the head when he says that these rich textiles that she is trying to get him to tread upon have been bought with silver, rather than gotten the old-fashioned, respectable way. Let's look at this next passage, 1379, where at this point Agamemnon and Cassandra have both been murdered inside the house of Atreus, and Clytemnestra steps forth into the light of day. This is probably the moment that Collier is depicting there in that magnificent painting, horrifying in its grandeur. And Clytemnestra boldly asserts that she is here with full consciousness, fully aware of what she has done. I stand where I struck over a deed completed. I did it this way, and I shall not deny it, so there should be no escape, no fending off death. I invite you to look at the performance, the British National Theatre performance of this scene, where Clytemnestra raises her right hand to the sky and says, "I revel in the blood of Agamemnon." Very stirring. Then the one final passage I want to have a little bit of a look at here is line 1431, where the chorus has expressed now its horror that Clytemnestra has actually become that bold, outspoken, non-female figure that was adumbrated earlier on at the beginning of the play. Clytemnestra takes on a nuanced role here, line 1431 and following, where she says, "Hear my oaths in their full right. I swear by justice fulfilled for my child, by ruin and by the fury, for all of whom I slew this man, that for me no expectation treads in fear's palace so long as fire is burned at my hearth by Aegisthus, loyal towards me as in the past," and so forth. What I want readers of this play to appreciate is how Clytemnestra has become willingly, willfully, an agent of justice. When she first steps onto the stage, she comments, this is at line 265 and following, she says, "May happy news come with the dawn from her mother night, as in the proverb." So she steps forth celebrating a new day. She celebrates this day, as you see in line 285, or sorry, line 275 and following. She says, "During the night which has now given birth to this day," I tell you. The day itself on which Agamemnon is murdered is a day of justice for Clytemnestra. She presents herself from beginning to end in this play as the agent of justice. She is in fact the Fury who has taken it upon herself, the God-given right upon herself to exercise vengeance for the death of Iphigenia. She would see no other role as fitting for herself. Now, in the last few seconds of this lecturette, let me point to the fact that in Reed's Index, namely the Oxford Guide to Classical Mythology and the Arts, there is no entry for Clytemnestra. I think that's interesting, maybe even compelling. So, would you log on to your own Top Hat Monocle account, find the question there under the discussion items, not under the questions themselves, but under discussions, what thematic connections might exist between Hesiod's Erinnues, the Furies, and Aeschylus's Clytemnestra. Write me 2 or 3 sentences about that and see what you think.